Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the first session of the Committee of Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development. We will be getting underway shortly, so I kindly request all of you to please take your seats for the opening session. Please kindly switch off your mobile phone or change to silent mode to avoid any disruption in the proceedings for the agenda item 1. You can follow us at #MPFDAP for live updates of the committee. Please kindly inform that all the agenda item documents, tentative program, list of participants, and other related information of the committee are found on the touch screens which are located on the first floor near conference room. Thank you for your kind attention. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the first session of the Committee of Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development. We will be getting underway shortly. So I kindly request all of you to please take your seats for the opening session. I also request you to please switch off your mobile phone or change to silent mode to avoid any disruption in the proceedings for the agenda item 1. Please follow us #MPFDAP for live updates of the committee. Please be kindly informed that all the agenda item documents, tentative program, list of participants and other related information of the committee are found on the touch screens which are located on the first floor near conference room. Thank you for your kind attention. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our special guest now entering the room.
Distinguished delegates, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Very warm welcome to Bangkok. Very warm welcome to ESCAP. My name is Hamza Ali Malik. I'm the Director of Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division. I welcome on the behalf of my team to this opening segment of the first session of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction, and Financing for Development, which we'll start shortly. I have the pleasure to invite Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, United Nations Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to make a welcome address and lead the opening segment. Dr. Akhtar, please.
So, a very good morning to everybody. Honorable Mr. Abisak Tanti Vura Vong, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. A very warm welcome to the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development. As a lot of you may already know, this committee was restructured and expanded to integrate the Financing for Development agenda to support the priorities of 2015 Addis Ababa Accord. This was a major restructuring of ESCAP because along with it, we also established a full-fledged unit to deal with financing for development areas. Today, this restructured committee has an opportunity to take an integrated view of the economy, public finances, and financial stability. This is critical as weak macroeconomic fundamentals and financial instability reduces the potential to service public demands or reduce poverty. Financial crises clearly have serious macroeconomic consequences, as we have observed. They are disruptive to medium and long-term growth and poverty reduction. Growing inequalities, given their interrelationship with economic and social cohesion, can dampen the benefits of growth. Hence, the need for this committee to take the three substantive topics in an integrated view. Of course, we will zero more into financing for development. In the future, sustainability considerations must be hardwired across macroeconomic, fiscal, and financial policies. ESCAP has been improving the quality and substance of the region's macroeconomic assessments. It has analyzed fiscal and financial policy constraints and explored options to increase resource mobilization and policies enabling the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Let me share some thoughts on these areas. First, there is need to lift growth. Above all else, the quality of growth is important, which must be inclusive, equitable, and sustainable, underpinned by policy measures, fostering the nexus between economic, social, and environmental dimensions. The dynamism of our region came under stress during the prolonged global crisis. Growth, and more so trade, did slow in Asia and Pacific over 2008 to 2013. Although the region nonetheless continued to be the engine of global growth. The region's developing countries are now set to grow at 5.4% in 2017, relative to around 8% at pre-crisis levels in 2007. With emerging markets and less developed economies doing better and China's growth stabilizing to new normal just under 7%. Growth dynamics in Asia have changed. Domestic demand has finally gained momentum, driven by rise in public and private consumption finally. It's been facilitated by low inflation, low interest rates, and robust consumer confidence. In addition, regional trade has gained momentum as global external demand picked up somewhat. Although economies continued to pursue expansionary fiscal monetary policies, their impact on private investment growth in 2015 has remained subdued. You will find this in our latest year-end update report. It will actually show a decline in the growth of private investment. Overcapacity in certain sectors is untenable. In some major economies, a debt overhang in the corporate and banking sector weighs on growth, on productivity, and on jobs. Risks of over-leveraging, unproductive investments, and financial vulnerabilities remain potential serious risks on the horizon. Against this backdrop, productive investments and structural reforms to support economic diversification, arrest environmental degradation, enhance social protection, and increase wages, including flexibility in it, all this will be critical to revive productivity to ensure sustainable, robust growth. But they do require stronger economic governance, and growth is necessary for eventually mobilizing public revenues. Let me now, after laying out this economic scenario, move to a second point, which is also related to the scenario, which is my second point. While you may have noticed large fiscal stimulus packages have spurred public spending in several countries, a more durable approach is needed to generate the necessary fiscal space to finance SDGs, both through direct public financing and private finance. Fiscal space remains constrained across Asia and Pacific, even though you will find it varies a lot across countries, and in some instances we do have it. Basically, the first element to look at is Asia-Pacific developing countries, whose tax revenue average is about 17.6% of GDP, and in some countries it is only 10% of GDP. Almost half of the global developing country average of 21.3%. Accommodating core expenditures such as interest payments, essential services, and basic social security coverage already results in fiscal deficits, pressures on which are likely to be compounded by emerging requirements of financing SDGs. Fiscal space, which is the gap between current fiscal balance and the constant balance that stabilizes debt over a medium-term horizon, is quite critical. In Asia and the Pacific, government debt GDP ratio varies a lot, but it should stabilize in coming years. However, it remains sensitive to growth scenario, potential interest rate spikes, and commodity prices. Fiscal policy's impact on economic growth does matter for debt sustainability. I would like to invite you to definitely look at this section of fiscal space analytics, which our team has been able to pull together in the year-end update. So ultimately, it's important we alleviate structural constraints to growth through infrastructure, skill enhancement, and productivity, innovation, etc. Let me move to the third point, which is again looking at the challenges to fiscal policy management during the period that we need to implement sustainable development. It calls for significant transformation of national tax regimes, and some of you are already engaged in this endeavor. It, of course, besides transformation of tax regimes, there's need to strengthen and reorient public expenditure by eliminating unproductive expenditures and streamlining incentives. Public finances, under all circumstances, need to be inclusive, redistributive, and deployed to leverage private and sustainable investment. Tax policy must be supportive of industry, economic diversification, technology and innovation, and other positive elements. It should tax emissions, excesses, and exploit the tax potential of economy by tightening the tax base and its administration and curbing illicit financing. While pursuing domestic resource exploitation, tax policy must promote equity through enhancing progressivity and boosting spending to enhance social protection coverage. In several economies, there is need to vertically and horizontally align and balance fiscal federalism arrangements across all tiers of governments. Given the demographic pressures on urban areas and associated demands for sustainable development, developing coherent municipal finance strategies must be considered, and it is an element of one of the handbooks that our team has been able to put together on the tax reforms. A fourth element, which is part and parcel of this committee's work, is really the small and medium-sized enterprise development, which, as we all know, are critical to support growth, competitiveness, productivity, and jobs. They also have a critical role in enhancing financial inclusion, now being boosted by fintechs and other new businesses and technological solutions. Not only is there scope to enhance bank lending for SMEs, but a range of innovative alternatives can be expanded. Private microfinance institutions offer a range of financial services very pertinent for the poor, women, and small or micro enterprises. We also have out there shared liability models and collateral-free lending backed by appropriate risk management to contain default rates, and of course, fintechs are growing explosively. To ensure broader and deeper access to finance for vulnerable, financial inclusive policy should be backed by the right blend of regulatory and supervisory frameworks to manage financial and technological risks. Fifth important point is the demand for sustainable infrastructure and its financing, which has grown to a colossal proportion in Asia and Pacific. It is estimated at around 26 trillion over the next 13 years. That's equivalent to 6% of GDP annually, more than 2% of GDP higher than the current investment levels in our area. Some 3.6 trillion of this additional infrastructure investment is needed to mitigate carbon emissions and increase resilience to climate change. Public resources in this context alone will not suffice. There is substantial scope to scale the capitalization of stock markets of developing countries, tap bond markets, and institutional assets under management, of which, as we know, over a quarter are from the Asia-Pacific region. Progress has been made in the region to promote corporate bond market development, as evident within ASEAN markets at least. At the same time, efforts are underway to structure public-private partnership deals to blend public and private financing and expertise. There is need to enhance PPPs, legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks across our region, and to develop robust project pipelines with appropriate risk management frameworks to lend confidence to private investors. Newly established multilateral financing institutions are expected to double the sources of multilateral and cross-border infrastructure financing in Asia-Pacific. So development of project pipelines would definitely be able to jumpstart in a bigger way the infrastructure funding and its development. Let me now move to ESCAP. At ESCAP, we have been collaborating in this particular area with 11 international organizations to support the PPP Knowledge Lab initiative, and have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the China PPP Center. I'm really counting on this partnership, which is with a network of organizations, but substantively also with China PPP Center, which has already phenomenal deals in the making. My last point on the resource mobilization deals with the need for us to push for low-carbon, climate-resilient infrastructure development, whose demand is sizable. Available estimates suggest public climate finance from developed countries to Asia-Pacific rose by over 20% between 2012 to 2015, and has now reached close to $19 billion, which is almost half the global total. If you put private finance, add private finance to it, we are really driving the growth in private climate finance in our region. In addition to these grants and concessional borrowing from the public sector, budgetary support is now also emerging in some at national levels in some economies to finance climate-aligned investments. Phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies offers and will contribute to fiscal space for greening economy and infrastructure projects. ESCAP is working with UNFCCC and private stakeholders, and you will witness a week-long of activities after this event to promote the understanding of climate finance and its modalities, developing awareness of macroprudential and financial regulatory frameworks to promote green investments. Focusing on some of these areas, ESCAP, with support of Ministers of Finance, and I'm really thankful to you, Your Excellency, to be gracing this occasion and supporting us in a number of ways. We also have had central bank governors on our platform, private sector, industry experts. We've held 4 rounds of financing for development forums annually since 2014. I'm proud of that because we are the only commission which has taken this subject in a very substantive manner, but prioritized it. These platforms have served to enhance advocacy, develop understanding and capacities for the right design of tax policies and strategies for resource mobilization, and talked about intermediation options for supporting the implementation of regional roadmap for the 2030 agenda in Asia and the Pacific, which you approved during the last Asia-Pacific Sustainable Development Platform. Now, we need to, 1, develop further analytical national studies, and we hope to convene national and regional workshops on different aspects of financing depending on the demand generated at the national level, but bring some of these platforms out here. One notable platform that we want to holistically look at is a regional workshop on SMEs. Second, we want to strengthen the ESCAP platform for PPP financing by partnering, as I said, with the Asia-Pacific network, both at regional and national level of PPP units and infrastructure financing specialists to exchange best practices, share research and experience, identify options to finance infrastructure projects, and offer capacity building. We have a small unit within Financing for Development that is looking at PPP experiences and has also analyzed how do we go about cross-border PPP transactions. A third area that we plan to explore further is establishment of a region-wide tax cooperation network, on which work I believe is quite advanced, because we plan to enhance interagency collaboration through an alliance with national and regional tax stakeholders. We are not talking about bricks and mortars here or buildings. We're talking about a network. We're talking about alliance with the Global Platform for Collaboration on Tax, which was launched in 2016. We're talking about collaboration with Asian Development Bank, OECD, and many others. This platform will develop a comprehensive portal of joint analytical products and capacity building programs for countries with special needs with support of our partners. Most of all, the big element why we are doing all this is that we want to prepare least developed countries for their graduation. We want to really help countries with special needs for mainstreaming tax policy work and developing financial inclusive policy. We want to complement and supplement the deliberations of the Vienna Istanbul and Samoa action plans, which are the heart of what we service at ESCAP. Let me now conclude. Sustaining long-term and quality economic growth is critical to promote inclusive and sustainable development. We have often talked about growth, finance, poverty reduction in fragmented manner. This is the first time this committee, through its restructuring, is allowing us to be a platform to take an integrated view. Something happens to macroeconomics, it derails your progress on poverty reduction. Something happens to the financial sector, it derails macroeconomic stability and your targets for poverty reduction. So as I see, macroeconomic and financial stability is a prerequisite for sustainable development, but it needs to be accompanied by an overall of the enabling policy environment that should not only incentivize private investment, but enhance avenues and opportunities for sustainable investment. That's what we are after. That, of course, requires fixing your tax policies. SDGs fiscal support cannot be feasible unless accompanied by measures to fully tap the tax potential of economies. And we have estimates for each of the countries on what your tax potential is that has been untapped. While reorienting tax policies to promote equity and efficient investment is also critical, expenditure reprioritization and efficiency is critical equally to direct spending for SDGs implementation, including diverting resources for enhancing social protection options. Effective debt management is critical to ensure the durability of fiscal space. And I have already mentioned during our regional cooperation and integration platform that given the demands for cross-border infrastructure, ESCAP will be launching more substantively the debt sustainability framework and the associated scenarios for different countries. We are focused on producing relevant analytical products for you, organizing capacity building workshop in countries with special needs, and building regional consensus through consultations and high-level dialogues. We look forward to your guidance and approval for the background note for Agenda Item 5, reorientation of the committee's terms of reference to enhance their coherence with the 2030 Agenda, Addis Ababa Action, and the Regional Roadmap. Believe you me, without the three elements of this committee, we are not going to be able to move on Sustainable Development Agenda. We saw this firsthand during the end of the MDGs, how we fell short of the aspirations because of the global crisis. Thank you very much for all of you for being here. And I'd like to thank my team for the incredible amount of work that they have done over the last 4 years to bring us to this level. Thank you. After having talked about so many things, I'm now delighted to invite a real practitioner sitting in our host country, His Excellency Mr. Abisak Tanti Vorangwong, I hope I've pronounced it right, His Excellency Finance Minister of Thailand, who I've had the privilege of having very dedicated discussions on the reform agenda that he has been supporting, and we hope to hear from him through his keynote speech. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Speaking.
You could go there, I think. People will be able to see you better.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the Secretary General of United Nations and Executive Secretary of ESCAP. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and thankful to ESCAP for inviting me here today. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has become top priority in most countries around the world. And thus, this country has shifted their strategy from growth-oriented to sustainability-oriented agenda. This paradigm shift requires more effort on domestic resources mobilization for development, or financing for development, which is the topic for today's discussion. Please allow me to share with you Thailand's experience and initiative in mobilizing financing resources for sustainable development. First, the national e-payment was launched to digitize our domestic payment and settlement infrastructure. The initiative aimed to reduce costs, increase speed, improve access to and inclusion, as well as crystallize the transfer of money between the government, business, and individuals. The Ministry of Finance, together with the Bank of Thailand, introduced the National E-Payment Master Plan to support Thailand 4.0 growth model and digital economy policy. The Master Plan has 4 core objectives, which are: 1. Increase financial inclusion with focus on rural developers. It's intended to increase the access of people in rural areas to basic financial services and payment through mobile banking, debit card, and e-money. 2. Enhance payment infrastructure efficiency with focus on greater enable to operators. It will enhance greater integrated, open, and fast platform to enable a market-driven competitive landscape and reduce cash usage. 3. Improve business competitiveness with focus on SME enablement. This initiative focuses on reducing administrative, labor, and paper usage costs, as well as brought down time for payment transactions. 4. Crystallize government service with focus on tax and disbursement interaction. It focuses on promoting greater reach of public service disbursement and expand tax collection coverage. Among the national e-payment project, the flagship initiative called PromptPay was successfully launched in 2015. PromptPay is a centralized integrated ID platform for fund transfer through multiple ID options, such as national ID, mobile number, bank account, and e-wallet number. 10 months after its launch, more than 36 million accounts has been registered, and more than $6.4 billion has been transferred through this PromptPay. Moreover, based on PromptPay infrastructure, we have now also launched the QR code payment initiative, whereby individual and business can pay and receive payment via QR code. Now, I would like to move to the second initiative. In order to sustain long-term financing for development, the PPP regulatory framework was renewed, and Thailand Future Fund has been planned to launch in the shortcoming. With these 2 mechanisms, private sector will take integral role in driving the economic growth, whereas the government shifts its role to become facilitator and regulator, adhering to the key principle of transparency, efficiency, and fiscal discipline. To steer the progress of development and realize the PPP project, the National PPP Committee, chaired by the Prime Minister, was established. Also, 2 PPP strategic plans were launched. The first one, effective from 2015 to 2019, has targeted 20 sectors, ranging from urban transportation system, waste management, to medical and education infrastructure. The current PPP strategic plan for 2017 to 2021 contains 55 projects in pipeline, with the estimated investment cost of about 1.6 trillion baht, or about 46 billion US dollars. These projects are regularly monitored by the Ministry of Finance and the State Enterprise Policy Office, or SEPO, is acting as a center of PPP unit in Thailand. Another thing is the Thailand Future Fund, or TFF. It will be initiated to mobilize funds from individual and institution investors to participate in state-owned infrastructure asset investment through the capital market. This initiative will lessen the financial burden of the public money in infrastructure. The fund will support the development of the country capital market by increasing the alternative product for investment through the capital market of Thailand. The target fund size is 100 billion Thai baht, or around 3 billion US dollars, and it is able to raise additional funds in future with its infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, financing for development cannot depend solely on government budget. Neither that it is full responsibility of private sector. It is important to stress that partnership among domestic and international private business, government, international organizations are crucial in crowding in funds from the private sector. Induce innovative financing mechanism, increase the effectiveness of financial resource, and foster financial inclusion within the country. Challenges may remain with us on the pathway to sustainable development. But what is more important is our strong commitment, practical decision, and action be taken while walking through these challenges. We gather here today to share our experience, view, and guidance on how we can move toward the SDGs, taking into account macroeconomic policy, as well as development and financing strategy. We are doing this not for us here in this room, but for our children and for the future generation. So I sincerely wish this event will be fruitful and meaningful for all of us to achieve the goal of leaving no one behind in Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank His Excellency, Minister of Finance of Thailand, for being gracious to come in midst of his official commitments. He had to leave because of a meeting that he has. I'd like to now turn to the speakers who are in line for their remarks. First of all, I have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Lee Thuch, Senior Minister, President of the National Committee of ESCAP, Cambodia, to deliver his keynote address. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Dr. Shamshad, United Nations Under Secretary General, ESCAP Executive Secretary, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good morning. It's my good privilege to address the floor at the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development on behalf of my government. To begin with, I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciations to Your Excellency Dr. Shamshad and the Secretariat of ESCAP for organizing this important event. My heartfelt appreciation also go to Thailand for welcoming all of us here, including myself. And also Thailand play a big role as our local host of this significant meeting of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I'm sure we all acknowledge the importance of this event. We have gathered here today to share a great deal with each other and create a vibrant and meaningful collaborations for building a new paradigm of partnerships, for building a better and economically safe future for our region. We had the chance to explore new horizons in expressing perspectives beneficial for the liberation of the committee. We will focus on how to sustain long-term economic growth and address sustainable development challenges in Asia and the Pacific, including poverty, rising inequality, financing sustainable development, and LDC graduation and post-graduation challenges and benefits. This will require, among other considerations, rethinking of public policies and considerable investment by both the public and private sector. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am so delighted to share my country's perspective on growth and development with you. Cambodia has been experiencing a rapid pace of socio-economic growth and has become a lower middle-income country according to the World Bank classification and a new Tiger Cup in Asia, thanks to the favorable conditions created by regional and global integration. And I must say also thanks to the success of our big immediate neighbors, namely Vietnam and Thailand. And of course, thanks to the long-term vision of our Prime Minister, Hun Sen. Economic growth has been on average 7.7% per year over the past 2 decades, driven by agriculture, industry underpinned by the garment industry and construction sectors, and a service sector supported by the tourism sector. Our GDP per capita has quintupled in less than 20 years, increasing from below 300 per capita, US dollars per capita in year 2000 to 1,434 US dollars per capita in 2017. Poverty has been reduced dramatically from 33.2% in 2004 to only 13.5% in 2014. One of the most impressive poverty reductions observed anywhere in the world. On average, poverty reduction has been more than 1.5% points per year. If an economic growth rate of 7% per year can be maintained, Cambodia will advance by 2030 into being a higher middle income country. Our government has established a roadmap that guarantees the country's peace as the crucial preconditions of any form of development. Despite focusing on economic growth and development, keeping peace and stability as the top prioritized agenda, the government ensures the stability and growth at all levels of the country. This success so far has also relied on the efforts and contributions from the private sector, civil society, international institutions, development partners, friendly countries, and the United Nations, and highly represented here today. However, we face some key challenges, including weak infrastructure to support growth, skill gaps and skill mismatch to support industrial development policies, as well as climate change and the risk of natural disasters that could hit the agricultural sector and Cambodians' people lives hard. Due to gradual reduction of ODA, financing investment is becoming more challenging for our government. Nevertheless, there has been an improvement on revenue collection that contributes to a narrower fiscal deficit. The country has also managed to increase exports through diversification of export products and destinations. In addition to improved fiscal policies, filling the gaps for financing would require FDIs and the private sector. In order to facilitate FDIs and investment from the private sector, the government is currently making a stride on improving infrastructure, which includes road connectivity, the electricity supply, developing skills to support production of emerging high value-added in manufacturing products, such as electronics appliances and components and vehicle spare parts, as well as continued North-South and South-South cooperation. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, in conclusion, we sincerely acknowledge ESCAP leadership and deep commitment in bringing us, the Asia-Pacific region, together to discuss how to sustain long-term economic growth and address sustainable development challenges in Asia and the Pacific. Finally, allow me to once again express my government's sincere appreciation to the UN systems and to our development partners for their continued cooperation and support for Cambodia and her people. I wish the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction, and Financing for Development a successful outcome. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for being here and for thought-provoking remarks. Let me now turn to and invite His Excellency Mr. Gathun Pikuni, Minister of Finance and Economic Management of Vanuatu, to deliver a keynote address. Excellency, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Excellency, Apika Tatiwokram, Mr. Wong, Minister of Finance of Thailand, which is just left, and Your Excellency, Mr. Lee Ting, Senior Minister and President of the Committee of ESCAP. Madam President, Executive Secretary of ESCAP, and colleague honorable ministers, the Secretary of the Commission, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Vanuatu. I join other esteemed speakers to congratulate our Chair Lady for assuming this chairmanship of the session. And first of all, I wish to extend my gratitude to the ESCAP and the government and people of Thailand for such warm and sincere host. Madam Chair, one or two welcome to the team for this session, Forecasting and Development. Microeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction, and Financing for Development. The theme is both timely and necessary because it reaffirms the General Assembly's resolutions on seeds, accelerate modalities, and action pathway. The resolution urges all parties to make concrete measures to expeditiously advance the sustainable development on small island development states, including through the international agreed development goals, in order for them to eradicate poverty, build resilience, and improve the quality of life, and recognize the need to implement expeditiously through genuine and durable partnership. The global effort in support of the sustainable development of small island development states through concrete, focused, forward-looking, and action-oriented programs. Timely because we are reminded that people and sustainable future remain the heartbeat of the 2020 agenda. Today, the world continues to face challenges at both the economic and political front. The global economy remains confined in a protracted period of slow growth, with the global output projected to expand by a modest 3.6% in 2017. This, however, only signifies economic stabilization rather than a restoration of global demands. Global rise of terrorism, violent extremists, asymmetric warfare, and political instability have reached all-time high in 2017 and will continue to weigh on economic prospects in many regions, including ours. Madam Chair, finance plays a critical role in the agenda. Without it, there will be no seamless connectivity in the opportunity to move forward. The formation of an integrated Asia-Pacific market will be limited. In addition, finance is needed to fund investment aimed at reducing environmental and social vulnerabilities and risks, such as those need to be reduced adverse impact on natural disasters, to enhance food security, or to increase eco-efficiency. The investment requirements that the region needs for the closing infrastructure gaps and reducing environmental and social vulnerabilities and risks are very large. By looking at the region as a whole and beyond the confines of individual countries' borders, it is clear that the regional mechanism for mobilizing resources for countries with excess of savings to those with insufficient savings could enhance prosperity in all countries and allow them to fully benefit from an eventual integration of their markets. Madam Chair, regional cooperation on trade finance for small and medium-sized enterprises, and disaster risk financing and insurance deserve special attention. Small, medium-sized enterprises account for 80 to 90% of the Pacific businesses, but are less likely to export than large enterprises because of their limited access to trade finance. This market is difficult for them to participate in international supply chain. Hence, it is important that we put more attention on regional cooperation to enhance access of small, medium-sized enterprise to trade finance. Apart from financing, project capacity is the key constraint to countries' effort to develop their infrastructure. In particular, most developing countries in the region have difficulties in generating a pipeline of investment-ready projects and designing and effectively negotiating complex contractual terms. Thus, their capacity to engage a wider range of potential investors and private partners is limited. Weak governance, skills, and lead to the implementation delays and quality concern. Therefore, this is an area that where greater assistance for development partners, including true South-South and triangular cooperation arrangement, will be very useful. Madam Chair, our understanding of the science of climate change has deepened in recent years in its devastating impacts respect no boundaries. Tropical cyclone Winston that wrecked our Fiji and cyclone Palm that hit Vanuatu are stark reminders that nature will continue to remind us that climate is changing faster than our effort to address it and constraining our effort to address poverty reduction. Solving a problem that is centuries in the making required effort of all of us. The Vanuatu government reaffirmed its deep commitment to addressing climate change consistently with the Paris Agreement and reiterate our pledge to do our part in reversing the decline in our ocean health. We remain dedicated to fully implementing a nationally determined commitment. Our goal in achieving 90% renewable energy by 2020 remains intact. Vanuatu remains committed to devising a national marine spatial plan by 2020 to improve collaboration and coordination among all coastal and ocean interests to better inform and guide decision-making in that affects to the livelihoods of people across Vanuatu's three pillars of sustainable development. The Vanuatu government remains fully committed to implementing Vanuatu's National Sustainable Development Plan. We also begin the challenge of translating our goal into real action. The government pledged to present Vanuatu voluntary national mine review in mid-2019. We hope to showcase our progress as well as setback in fulfilling our sustainable goal. Mr. Chairman, Vanuatu continue to promote inclusive growth, structural reform. Our target development in several areas, private enterprise. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I thank you very much for the speech, and I wish you the best for this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. This, of course, concludes Agenda 1A. The keynote addresses by distinguished speakers provided us, of course, lots of insights that will be very helpful for deliberations of this committee. And, of course, all of you will add further value to these statements in your interventions, as I see. With this, let me turn to the next agenda, item 1B, which is election of Bureau officers. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would now like to open the floor to solicit proposals for the Bureau. Are there any show of hands of the countries? Where is Sri Lanka? Okay, so I recognize the distinguished delegate from Sri Lanka.
Good morning. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my delegation, I have honored of proposing the following names of the Bureau of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development at its first session. As Chair, I have the honor to propose Her Excellency Ms. Rosemary Chi Edilon, Under Secretary, National Development Officer 1, Planning and Policy, National Economic and Development Authority, Philippines. For Vice Chairs, I propose the following persons. His Excellency Mr. Lee Tuk, Senior Minister, President of the National Committee of ESCAP, Cambodia. His Excellency Mr. Gaetan Pikiani, Minister of Finance and Economic Management, Vanuatu. His Excellency Mr. Ahmad Jawad Osmani, Deputy Minister on Administration and Finance, Ministry of Economy, Afghanistan, and His Excellency Mr. Chameleon Paul Sena, Vice Minister, Minister of Planning and Investment, Lao People's Democratic Republic. For the position of Rapporteur, I nominate His Excellency Mr. Nim Georgie, Finance Secretary, Minister of Finance, Royal Government of Bhutan. My delegation's proposals of the Bureau is based upon several considerations such as seniority and experience on the macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, financing for development issues, gender balance, as well as geographical representation. I am confident that under their able leadership, they will ensure a successful conclusion to deliberations of the committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the delegate from Sri Lanka. Do any other delegates wish to suggest alternative nominations or second these nominations? I see the flag of Japan, so just recognize the delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Executive Secretary. Good morning, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my delegation, I have the honor of seconding the names proposed by the distinguished delegates from Sri Lanka for the Bureau of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development at its first session. Thank you very much.
Are there any other? I recognize the distinguished delegate of India and thank you to the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Madam Executive Secretary, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my delegation, I have the honor of also seconding names of Bureau of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development at its first session. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further intervention anybody wishes to make at this point on the Bureau? I hear none, so I have the distinct pleasure to formally endorse and announce that the Bureau of the first session of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development is composed of the following. As Chair, Her Excellency Ms. Rosemary Edilon, who's very well known on this platform, Under Secretary, National Development Office, Planning and Policy of NEDA, National Economic and Development Authority of the Philippines. As Vice Chair, His Excellency Lee Tuk, Senior Minister, President of National Committee of ESCAP, Cambodia. His Excellency Mr. Gaetan Pikiani, Minister of Finance and Economic Management of Vanuatu. His Excellency Mr. Ahmad Jawad Osmani, Deputy Minister on Administration and Finance, welcome, Ministry of Economy of Afghanistan. And His Excellency Mr. Chameleon Paul Sena, Vice Minister, Ministry of Planning and Investment, Lao People's Democratic Republic. Welcome to this platform. Wonder where you are. Okay. And as rapporteur, His Excellency Mr. Nim Dorji, Finance Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Royal Government of Bhutan. Please join me in congratulating the Bureau for their election, and I thank them personally for accepting this assignment. I'm now pleased to invite, of course, the chair of the meeting to take over her seat at the rostrum. I'd like to thank everybody else who have presented these nominations and endorsed for the various positions.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and privilege for me to assume the chair of this important meeting. On behalf of the other members of the Bureau, I wish to express our appreciation to the distinguished representatives for the confidence you have placed in us. As chair of the first session of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction and Financing for Development, I shall do my best to ensure that this meeting achieves its objectives and produces fruitful outcomes for our future works together. As already mentioned by our esteemed Executive Secretary, this is indeed the correct configuration where we consider the interplay of macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, and financing for development. In this connection, I would like to rely on the spirit of cooperation and involvement of all distinguished delegates and the able support of the members of the Bureau. Please allow me also to express my appreciation to the Secretariat of the ESCAP for the arrangement of this meeting. Furthermore, I also would like to express my appreciation to the distinguished special speakers for the delivery of thoughtful messages during the opening session. Before starting, I would like to make a few housekeeping announcements. First, if your delegation wishes to register to speak or deliver a statement on any agenda item, please fill in one of the forms that is available on the desk in front of you and bring it to the conference room officer who is sitting on my desk, on the desk at the front of the conference room to my left over there. Second, in case your delegation wishes the Secretariat to arrange a bilateral meeting with other delegation participating in this conference, the same conference room officer will be able to help you in that as well. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let us now take up agenda item 1C, adoption of the agenda. The provisional agenda is contained in document E/ESCAP/CMPF1L-1. Are there any comments on the agenda? For which you don't need to fill up the form. So if there are no comments, then agenda in the document E/ESCAP/CMPF/L-1 is adopted. So before I adjourn this meeting, I would like to inform all the delegates that the committee will resume promptly at 2 p.m. in the same conference room to consider agenda item 2.1. I understand that the Secretariat has some announcements to make, and I now invite the Secretariat to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. 2 To enrich the discussions and experiences of participants, the Secretariat has planned several workshops during the course of next 2 or 3 days. For instance, between now and 2 p.m. today, we have about 5 different workshops. So I'll highlight them just for your interest and the room numbers and locations. So first of all, we have a regional workshop on public-private partnerships and capital market financing for sustainable infrastructure development in conference room 4 between now and 1 o'clock. Second, we have a workshop on domestic public resource mobilization for sustainable development in meeting room G between now and 1 o'clock. We have an expert group meeting on macroeconomic prospects and policy challenges in Asia and the Pacific, including countries with special needs, which started its work on Monday, but we have a concluding session today between 11:15 and 12:45 in meeting room C. We also have an expert group meeting on the regional implementation of the Istanbul Declaration and Program of Action for the least developed countries in meeting room F between now and 12:30 p.m. And finally, and last but not the least, we have a launch of our Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific 2017. It's a year-end update. It's a special side event at conference room 4 between 1 and 2 p.m. Kindly plan your lunch accordingly and try and participate in most events, whichever makes it feasible given your schedule. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you for the group photo. Could I please request one delegate per member states, along with representatives of United Nations bodies, specialized agency and related organizations, intergovernmental organizations and observers for the group photo outside of Tier 3. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Secretariat. I now declare this meeting adjourned. See you later at 2 o'clock.